Well, when my parents found out from the relatives in Cuba that Castro had come in and he was closing everything from newspapers to companies, and this just did not look like what he had promised the people, right? My grandparents encouraged my father to see if he could stay a little bit extra time with this company, Aetna. And so what became a little bit extra time became we just basically stayed. And again, as a child, I didn't understand really much what was going on. I just saw that all of my uncles and aunts were coming to our house, and they stayed in our house. Our house became kind of like the welcome place for my mother's 5 siblings. They were all younger than she was, and so they stayed with us until they got their own jobs and their own apartments or got married or whatever. So it wasn't really until much later that I realized I had been oblivious to what the politics were, because my parents would not really burden us with that. But I grew up in Chicago. We lived in what's called South Shore, and we were the only Latinos there. We lived in a neighborhood that was basically Polish heritage, and my school was basically, again, people from Polish or European heritage. They had never seen a Latino, or they couldn't pronounce my name. But basically, my friends were all American. It wasn't until, and high school the same thing. It wasn't until I got into college where I really started making Hispanic friends. And that's really also where I became more of an activist, realizing that my family was in Cuba, middle class, and my father had gone to the University of Havana. So in my family, it wasn't a question really whether any of us would go to college. It was more like what college and what we would do. And when I ended up in college and started making friends, I realized that some of the young students that I was with were not even making it through the first semester. Their families were not understanding of what the rigors of college really are, and so they expected the kids to be able to hold down a full-time job and come home and take care of the brothers and sisters and all of that, and that's what started opening my mind up to, well, no, we're not all the same. And that stayed with me really into, well, it stayed into my future work, so that when I ended up working on a project while I was a doctoral student at Northwestern University, we had the opportunity to just do something over the summer within the Spanish community. And when you mentioned the demographics, Chicago is actually one of the cities with the largest Mexican-American population. And I actually worked an entire summer with migrant workers in northern Illinois, and they were all Mexican workers who, you know what a migrant worker is, and you know their conditions. And so that continued to open my mind already beyond just what the students were going through, just what people from different social strata are going through. And so I think my life has been very much about trying to help any marginalized person. I'm very sensitive to that, and so when I became a professor, I realized that students were being drawn to me because I was the only Latina that had been hired in the longest time. Certainly there were no administrators who were Latino at that time. And so I, over the years, had made friends with other people just like me who had made it into college, had graduated, were deans, were professors, were professionals within the academic field. And we ended up working with Miguel del Valle, who was a councilman in Chicago. And with his help and his contacts, those of us who were interested in improving the chances of Latino students, and particularly first-generation students, we formed an organization that now next year will be celebrating 30 years. I was the president, I was the first president, and I was president there for 10 years. It's called ILACHE, the acronym, Illinois Latino Council on Higher Education. And our membership is from, I would say at this point in time, every university and college in Illinois. And what we did in a very incremental way was at our own institutions, when we started, there were probably 8 or 9 of us, trying to make our administrators aware of the need for entry into the world of perhaps some success for yourself in future generations. So anyway, we formed this Ilache group, still around 30 years later. I'm still involved with them. I have a scholarship that I give out every year. It's a small scholarship, but I mentor some of the students as well, because our hope is that they see that Latino, being Latino, speaking Spanish, respecting your culture, and also respecting the culture we're in, but understanding that there's a synergy that happens when cultures come together. And so our group has managed to graduate, and we have many, mainly success stories from first-generation students who've gone through their own universities, but our organization keeps that going. And because I love international things, cultures, not just Hispanic, in Illinois also a similar association that celebrated 35 years last year, and I was invited back as an honoree, is the International Studies and Programs Consortium. And in that group, my focus was to bring international and cultural perspectives across the curriculum. And our colleges and universities, again, from across Illinois, tried to do that. So even though, as a Cuban American, obviously that's my love, but I don't think it should stop there. It should not stop there. It should be about making the world a safer and more vibrant place for people of all cultures and backgrounds. We have a lot to contribute.